It is hard to even imagine what drives people who abandon their children. Some are motivated by poverty, some are afraid of condemnation from relatives and friends, some find themselves in a hopeless situation. There is one thing that is true: there is no justification for such an act. But it is not for us to judge them. We can only be glad that our story today ended well for an abandoned newborn girl, and all thanks to the sensitivity and attention of one wonderful creature, a dog named George. This monstrous incident took place in Port Elizabeth. On that day, 63-year-old pensioner Charmaine went out for a walk with her dachshund George. Without knowing why, as if an unknown force led her, she turned off the usual route and went in a completely different direction. Charmaine could not explain what made her take a new path. It was a real miracle. Suddenly, her pet rushed forward as if he had seen or heard something. Running up to a concrete slab that covered a hole with a drainpipe, George stopped and started barking furiously. Charmaine came up to her dog. He was obviously very nervous and behaved unusually. Charmaine then realized what had caused her dog's anxiety. From under the concrete slab, a plaintive cry could be heard. At first, the woman thought that a cat had fallen into the drainpipe and could not get out. But a second later, a chill ran through Charmaine's body as she realized that it was the sound of a human baby. There was nobody around. Where could she have come from? The woman tried to push the slab away on her own, but to no avail. Then, assessing the situation and realizing that time was of the essence, she rushed to the nearby road. She waved to passing cars, but no one stopped. Finally, one car stopped, driven by a man named Corny Williams. Quickly explaining the situation to him, they both ran to the place where Charmaine had heard the cry of the baby. Corny desperately tried to move the slab, but all his attempts were in vain. Then he remembered that there was a tire iron in the trunk of his car. The man quickly brought it, and together with Charmaine, they were finally able to move the heavy concrete slab. When the sunlight fell to the bottom of the pit, they saw a small baby on the ground near the drainpipe. The baby was crying with all her strength, but it sounded more like wheezing as her strength decreased every moment. Before taking the baby in his arms, Corny took several pictures of this terrible find on his phone. The man understood that these pictures would be useful in the further investigation of the case. Immediately after that, he took off his jacket, carefully wrapped the baby in it, and climbed out of the hole. The second miracle of this story was that the entire bottom of the pit was literally strewn with red ants, which dug into the man's body and bit him while he was below, but none of these insects touched the baby. It was as if even the red ants felt compassion for the unfortunate creature and understood that the baby was now fighting for her life. Charmaine had already called an ambulance, and they arrived very quickly. After a preliminary examination of the girl's body, it was decided to urgently transport her to the intensive care unit of the nearest clinic where the baby was given first aid. The newborn girl was diagnosed with severe hypothermia and respiratory problems, but in general she was quite healthy and had every chance of survival. This was the third miracle of the story. It is not known how long the baby was underground in the dark and cold around a swarm of stinging red ants, but remained almost unharmed. The girl was named Grace April, and after a few days spent in intensive care, she was transferred to the general ward for newborns. Who could have committed such an atrocity remains a mystery so far. The investigation is underway, but there are no results yet. How the baby could be under this concrete slab also remains unknown. After all, it was impossible to move it alone. There are so many questions in this story and so few answers. And the hero of this story is the brave dog George, who managed to hear the weak cry of a little girl, find her, and call his master for help. This entire story is nothing less than a miracle. It is great that such sensitive and devoted creatures as dogs live among us. After all, compared with the monstrous deeds of people, we can safely say that sometimes animals act more humane than humans.